For most of human history, you did not choose your leader. You were born under them. You obeyed them. And when they died, their child replaced them. Power was inherited. Seized. Stolen. Taken by force. Elections, the idea that ordinary people could decide who rules, are surprisingly new. And their story is not simple. It is messy. It is imperfect. And it changed the world. Long before ballot papers and voting booths, power came from strength. In ancient tribes, leaders were often warriors. The strongest fighter. The wisest elder. The one who could protect the group. Sometimes councils existed, but choice was limited and informal. Then something unusual happened in ancient Greece. In the 5th century BCE, Athens developed a system where male citizens could vote directly on laws and decisions. They gathered in an open assembly and raised their hands. It was not private. It was not equal. Women, enslaved people, and foreigners were excluded. But for the first time in recorded history, political decisions were openly debated and decided by citizens. Athens also used something fascinating, broken pieces of pottery called ostraca. Citizens could write a name on them to vote someone into exile. This process was called ostracism. It was an early form of accountability. The Roman Republic followed with a more structured system. Beginning in 509 BCE, Rome removed its king and created assemblies where citizens voted for magistrates and laws. But Roman voting power was not equal. Wealthier classes had greater influence in certain assemblies. Over time, political competition turned violent. Corruption grew. And eventually, strong military leaders gained dominance. By the 1st century BCE, the Republic gave way to empire. Elections existed, but real power shifted upward. For centuries afterward, elections became rare. Medieval Europe was dominated by monarchies. Kings claimed authority by divine right. Leadership passed through bloodlines, not ballots. However, small sparks remained. Some Italian city-states like Venice had complex voting systems to select leaders. Certain councils in parts of Europe involved limited representation. But these were exceptions. The real transformation began much later. In the 17th and 18th centuries, political philosophy changed. Thinkers argued that government should be based on consent. In 1689, England's Bill of Rights limited royal authority and strengthened parliament. Though voting rights were restricted, representative government expanded. In 1776, a new nation declared independence and built a constitutional system based on elected representatives. Voting rights were still limited to property-owning men in many places, but the framework for regular elections was established. In 1789, revolution in France challenged monarchy and demanded citizen participation. The path was unstable, and violence followed, but the idea of elections as a foundation of government spread across Europe and beyond. During the 19th century, one of the most important developments occurred, the secret ballot. Before this, voting was often public. People declared their choice openly, making bribery and intimidation common. In the 1850s, reforms introduced standardized, government-printed ballots and private voting spaces. This became known as the Australian ballot. It protected voter independence. Gradually, restrictions based on property were reduced in many countries. More men gained the right to vote. Then came one of the most significant expansions in electoral history, women's suffrage. Beginning in the late 19th century, movements across different countries demanded equal voting rights for women. In 1893, New Zealand became the first self-governing country to grant women the right to vote in national elections. Over the following decades, many nations followed, particularly after World War I. The 20th century reshaped elections further. After World War II, many newly independent nations adopted constitutional systems with regular elections. International norms around voting, representation, and electoral monitoring began to develop. But elections were not always free or fair. Some governments held votes without real competition. Others restricted opposition. In certain periods, turnout declined as trust weakened. Still, the idea of elections had become global. Today, most countries hold some form of national election. The methods have changed dramatically. Paper ballots are now joined by electronic voting machines. Some nations allow early voting or mail-in ballots. Voter registration systems have become digitized. Technology has made counting faster, but it has also introduced new concerns about security, misinformation, and influence. Social media can amplify political messages instantly. Campaigns are no longer limited to town squares or newspapers. Information travels globally in seconds. Despite these changes, the core concept remains the same, a peaceful method to transfer power. An election is not just about choosing a leader. It is about legitimacy. When citizens accept results, even when their preferred candidate loses, stability follows. When trust breaks down, conflict can rise. Throughout history, elections have expanded, contracted, been manipulated, reformed, protected, and challenged. They began as raised hands in a stone assembly. They evolved into structured ballots. They became private choices in small booths. Now they exist in a digital age where billions of people participate in some form of electoral process. Elections are not perfect. They do not guarantee justice. They do not eliminate corruption. But compared to systems where power changes through violence, they offer something rare, a structured, repeatable, and largely peaceful way to decide leadership. From ancient pottery shards to encrypted databases. From public declarations to private ballots. The method has changed. The principle has endured. The right to choose, even when limited, even when contested, has reshaped nations. And as long as societies debate who should lead them, the story of elections is still being written.